Somewhere right now, a man is sitting at his kitchen table, looking at a piece of paper. On it, a number, $1,900. That's not a bill. That's not a mistake. That's what Social Security sends him every month. And he's just realized, for the first time, really realized, that it's not enough. Not for the rent. Not for the groceries that used to cost half of what they cost now. Not for the doctor's visit he keeps putting off. Maybe that's not you. Not yet. But somewhere in the back of your mind, you've already done this math. You've already felt that quiet drop in your stomach. Here's the truth. Nobody tells you at 40, at 50, at 55. Social Security was never built to be your retirement. It was built to be a floor, not a plan. And tonight, we're going to talk about the plan nobody hands you. The one Wall Street doesn't put in a commercial. The one your parents never needed, because their world was different. Stay with me. This isn't about fear. It's about seeing clearly. There's a date that almost nobody your age has heard about. Not because it's hidden, it's public. It's printed every single year in a government report that almost nobody reads. The date is 2033. Some years the projection says 2034. But it moves closer, not further, every time they update it. That's the year, according to the Social Security Trustees themselves, when the trust fund that backs up your benefit runs dry. Not the program. The program doesn't disappear, but the cushion does. The reserve does. The part that's been quietly covering the gap between what workers pay in and what retirees take out. Let me say that again. Slower, because it deserves to land. Right now, the money going out to retirees is already more than the money coming in from workers. That gap has been covered by a trust fund built up decades ago. And that trust fund has a bottom. When it hits that bottom, the law, as it stands today, only allows Social Security to pay out what it collects in real time. Nothing more. What does that mean in dollars? The trustees themselves have said it plainly. If nothing changes, benefits could be cut by roughly 20%, maybe more. Not because Washington decided to punish retirees, because the math simply won't allow anything else. There won't be a villain in this story. Just a number that ran out. Now sit with that for a second. Not panic, just sit with it. Because most people your age, people who've worked 30, 35, 40 years, who've paid into this system paycheck after paycheck, grew up believing Social Security was a promise carved in stone. Something untouchable, something that would always be there, exactly as described, exactly as expected. And I understand why. That's what was on the pamphlets. That's the story our parents told us, because it was mostly true for them. But a promise built on a shrinking foundation isn't the same as a guarantee. And here's the part that stings the most. This isn't new information. This countdown has been running for years. It's been in every trustee's report since long before you started paying attention. The people who manage the system have known. The economists have known. What's changed is that the deadline is no longer a distant abstraction. It's inside the retirement window for people who are 45, 50, 55 years old right now. Think about that. If you're 52 today, 2033 isn't some far-off future. That's 11 years away. That could be right in the middle of your retirement, not before it. You could retire believing one number, and a few years later, watch that number shrink. Through no fault of your own, no bad decision of yours, just because a fund built in a different era ran out of runway. I'm not telling you this to scare you into doing something reckless. I'm telling you because I think you deserve to know the shape of the thing you're planning around. You wouldn't build a house on a foundation you hadn't inspected. And for most of your life, this is the foundation you were told to build your retirement on. Now, will Congress act before 2033? Maybe. There's a real chance lawmakers step in, the way they have before, in 1983, when the system faced a similar crisis and they raised the retirement age, adjusted taxes, bought themselves another few decades. It's possible they do something like that again. Nobody can promise you that. Nobody can promise you they won't. But here's what I've learned. Watching people plan their lives around institutions instead of evidence, hope is not a strategy. Waiting for someone else to fix a problem you can see coming is not a plan. It's a bet. And it's a bet you didn't choose to make. It was made for you by a system designed in 1935 for a country that doesn't exist anymore. Back then, the average American didn't live long past 65. Today, people are living into their 80s, their 90s. Back then, there were 40 workers paying in for every retiree taking out. Today, that ratio has collapsed to around 3 workers for every retiree, and it keeps shrinking as the population ages. The system isn't broken because anyone stole from it. It's strained because the math it was built on doesn't match the world we live in anymore. More retirees, fewer workers, longer lives. The same formula, stretched further than it was ever designed to stretch. So when I say there's a countdown, I don't mean it to sound dramatic. I mean it the way a mechanic means it when he tells you the brakes are wearing thin. You can still drive. You still have time. But pretending you didn't hear it isn't wisdom. It's just a different kind of risk. What I want for you, genuinely, is to walk into your 50s, 60s, 70s with your eyes open. Not afraid. Informed. Because the people who end up broke in retirement aren't usually the ones who made one catastrophic mistake. They're the ones who never looked at the date on the calendar until it was already behind them. We'll talk about what to actually do about this. That's coming. But first, I want you to fully understand the ground you're standing on, because the next part of this conversation only makes sense once you do. I want to tell you about a version of America that most of us grew up watching, even if we didn't grow up living it. A man works for one company, sometimes 2, for 35 years. He retires at 65 with a gold watch and a pension. That pension, plus Social Security, plus a paid-off house, was enough. Not luxurious, enough. He and his wife could travel a little, help the grandkids a little, live out their years without lying awake doing math at midnight. That was your father's plan. Maybe your grandfather's. And somewhere along the way, a lot of us absorbed that story as the template, as what retirement is supposed to look like, as what waits for us if we just work hard and stay the course. Here's the hard part. That world is gone. Not fading. Gone. And I don't say that to be dramatic. I say it because the sooner you stop measuring your future against a template that no longer exists, the sooner you can build something that actually fits the world you're living in. Let's start with the pension, because that's the biggest piece that vanished. In the 1980s, most large companies offered a defined benefit pension, a guaranteed monthly check for life, funded and managed by the employer. Today, the vast majority of private sector workers have no such thing. What replaced it is the 401k, a plan where you, not the company, decide how much to save, how to invest it, and how to make it last. That shift didn't just change the paperwork, it transferred the entire risk of retirement from the employer's shoulders to yours. Nobody sent an announcement about that. It just happened, decade by decade, job by job, until an entire generation woke up responsible for a problem their parents never had to solve alone. Then there's the cost of living itself. Your parents likely bought a home when home prices were a small multiple of the average income. Healthcare, while never cheap, hadn't yet become the kind of expense that could quietly eat an entire retirement. Groceries, gas, basic goods. They moved at a pace that felt survivable. Today, prices have climbed in ways that don't just sting, they compound. $1 saved in 1995 doesn't buy what it used to. And the years ahead of you, statistically, are more years than your grandfather ever had to fund. That's the third piece, and it's the one people talk about the least, because on the surface, it sounds like good news. We're living longer. Genuinely, that is good news. But it also means retirement isn't a 10 or 15-year chapter anymore. For a lot of people today, it's 25, 30 years, sometimes more. That's not a short bridge you're building. That's a second working-length lifetime you need to fund, without a paycheck. Think about what that really means. If your grandfather retired at 65 and lived to 78, he needed to fund 13 years. If you retire at 65 and live to 92, which is no longer rare, you need to fund 27. Almost double the years on savings that, adjusted for inflation, often aren't double what he had. That gap doesn't announce itself. It just quietly widens every year you don't address it. So let's add it up, honestly, without flinching. No guaranteed pension, higher costs, longer years to cover, and a Social Security system running on a countdown clock. Your parents built their retirement standing on 4 legs. You're being asked to build yours standing on one, the one leg that was never designed to carry the whole weight in the first place. I tell you this not to make you feel behind. I tell you this because I've watched too many people in their 40s and 50s keep waiting for a version of retirement that simply isn't coming back. Not because they were lazy, not because they made bad choices, but because they were planning for a world that quietly disappeared while they were busy working inside it. There's a kind of grief in that, if you let yourself feel it. Grieving the plan you thought you'd inherit. The ease you assumed would be there. That's real, and I won't pretend it isn't. But here's what I've also seen. Sitting across from people who finally stopped waiting for the old plan to come back. The moment they accepted that the rules had changed, something shifted. Not despair. Clarity. Because once you stop mourning a system that isn't coming back, you can start building the one that actually belongs to you. One built with your own hands, on your own terms, starting today. Whatever today looks like for you. Your parents didn't have to think about this the way you do. That's not a criticism of them, and it's not a tragedy for you. It's just the truth of the world you were handed. And the people who do well in this new world aren't the ones who resent that truth. They're the ones who stop arguing with it and start working with it. That's where we're headed next. Not another warning, but the actual shape of what a modern backup plan looks like. The one nobody hands you at a company orientation, because there is no more company orientation for retirement. There's just you deciding to learn it. Here's something interesting I've noticed over the years. Walk into any bank, turn on any financial news channel, and you'll hear the same handful of ideas repeated back to you. Save more, cut your coffee, max out your 401k, hope the market goes up. All true, to a point. None of it is a plan. It's a slogan dressed up as advice. The people who actually retire well, not lucky, not inherited money well, but built it themselves well, tend to be working with a different playbook. Not a secret playbook. Just one that doesn't get advertised on daytime television because there's no commission in telling you the truth, plainly. Let's walk through it, piece by piece, the way I'd explain it to a friend at my kitchen table. The first piece is income you can't outlive. This is the entire idea behind an annuity, and I know the word alone makes some of you tense up, because annuities have a bad reputation, often earned by products sold with fees nobody explained and surrender charges nobody mentioned. But strip away the bad sales pitches, and the core idea is simple and old as time. You hand a portion of your savings to an insurance company, and in exchange, they guarantee you a paycheck for the rest of your life, no matter how long you live. It's not exciting. It's not going to make you rich. But it does something your 401k alone cannot do. It removes the fear of outliving your money. For someone who's already worried about a shrinking Social Security check, that kind of guarantee isn't glamorous. It's oxygen. The second piece is income that grows while you sleep. Dividend investing. This isn't about picking the next hot stock. It's about owning shares in stable, established companies that have a long history of paying a portion of their profits directly to shareholders, quarter after quarter, year after year, often increasing that payment even through recessions. Some of these companies have raised their dividend every single year for 25, 50 years straight. Own enough of them, reinvest patiently while you're still working, and by the time you retire, you're not selling off pieces of your nest egg to survive. You're living off the fruit the tree produces, while the tree itself keeps standing. The third piece is real estate income. Not flipping houses, not becoming a landlord chasing midnight repair calls at 70 years old, but owning income-producing property, directly or through vehicles like REITs, real estate investment trusts, that let you collect rental-style income without ever unclogging a toilet yourself. Real estate has one quality almost nothing else has. It tends to move in a different rhythm than the stock market. When stocks stumble, real estate income often keeps arriving month after month, like clockwork, because people need somewhere to live regardless of what the market is doing. And the fourth piece, the quiet one, the one accountants love and nobody talks about at parties, is the Roth conversion. Here's the idea in plain English. Most of your retirement savings, if they're in a traditional 401k or IRA, are going to be taxed the day you withdraw them, at whatever tax rate exists at that future moment, a rate nobody can promise you, in a country running historic deficits. A Roth conversion means paying the tax now, on your terms, while rates and your income allow it, so that decades from now, that money grows and comes out completely tax-free. It's not a loophole. It's a choice about when you'd rather deal with the tax man, now, on your schedule, or later, on his. None of these four pieces on their own replaces Social Security. That's not the point. The point is what happens when you combine them. Instead of one single, fragile income source that depends entirely on a government trust fund with a countdown clock, you build several smaller streams, each one flowing from a different direction, each one able to hold steady, even if one of the others slows down. Picture it like a table standing on 4 legs instead of one. If one leg wobbles, a bad year in the market, a slow season in real estate, the table doesn't collapse. It just leans slightly, while the other 3 legs keep it upright. That's the entire philosophy in one image. Not maximum returns, not getting rich, just stability, built from more than one direction, so that no single disappointment can take everything down with it. That's not a Wall Street secret. It's just not a story that fits in a 30-second commercial. There's no flashy sales pitch for patience. There's no billboard for own boring, reliable assets for 20 years. But that quiet, unglamorous approach is exactly what separates the people who retire with peace of mind from the people who retire with a single number and a prayer. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. This sounds like it's for people who already have money to spare. I understand that instinct. But the truth is, every single one of these pieces can start small. Smaller than you'd think. What matters isn't the size of the first step. What matters is whether you take it before the years run out or after. Let me ask you something, and I want you to answer honestly, even if it's uncomfortable. Not out loud, just to yourself. If your paycheck stopped tomorrow, not your Social Security, that hasn't started yet for most of you. Your actual paycheck, the one you're living on right now, how long could you keep your life running exactly as it is? A month? 3 months? A year? For a lot of people watching this, the honest answer makes them a little uneasy. And that unease is worth paying attention to, because it's usually the first sign of something bigger. So let's talk about the 3 signs. The real ones, not the vague ones. That someone is quietly heading toward a broke retirement, even while doing everything they think they're supposed to be doing. The first sign is this: your entire retirement plan lives in one place. For some people, that's a 401k. For others, it's simply Social Security itself. The belief that when the time comes, that monthly check will be enough. The way it was enough for a relative once. If you ask most people over 45 where their retirement income is going to come from, and they can only name one source, that's not a plan. That's a hope wearing a plan's clothing. A real plan has more than one leg to stand on, because life has a habit of kicking out whichever leg you're leaning on hardest. A market downturn the year you retire, a company that freezes contributions, a benefit cut nobody saw coming. One source of income means one point of failure. And in a world where the safety net itself has a countdown clock on it, one point of failure is a very expensive place to stand. The second sign is quieter, and honestly, it's the one I see most often in people who otherwise look financially responsible. It's the absence of any passive income at all. Not zero savings. Plenty of people with this sign have decent savings. What they don't have is anything actually producing income while they sleep. No dividends landing in an account. No rental income. No annuity paying out. Just a lump sum sitting there, waiting to be slowly withdrawn, year after year, hoping it lasts as long as they do. That's not income. That's a countdown of a different kind. A personal one, running in parallel with the one we already talked about. And the stress of watching a static number shrink every single year, wondering if you'll outlive it, is a kind of quiet anxiety that follows people into their 70s and 80s, even when, on paper, they did everything right. I've talked to people in this exact position, good savers, disciplined, careful their whole lives, who describe retirement not as freedom, but as a slow-motion math problem they run in their heads every single month. Checking the balance, subtracting the withdrawal, watching the number get smaller, a little more each year, with no new deposits coming in to replace it. That's not the picture anyone paints when they imagine retirement. And it doesn't have to be the reality either, not if the income streams exist before the paycheck stops. The third sign is the one people resist hearing the most because it doesn't feel like a financial issue on the surface. It's total dependence on a fixed date. 65. 67. Whatever number sits in the back of someone's mind as when I can finally stop. When your entire sense of security is tied to a single calendar date, rather than to actual growing streams of income, you've built your peace of mind on timing instead of substance. And timing is the one thing none of us fully control. Health can shift the date. A layoff at 58 can shift the date. A market crash the year before retirement can shift the date. People who build real income streams, ones that grow whether they're 60 or 70, aren't hostages to a specific day on a calendar. They have options. And options, more than any specific number, are what actual financial security looks like. Think about the difference between someone who says, I can retire the day I turn 67, and someone who says, I could retire any time in the last 3 years, and I chose 67 because it felt right. Same age on paper, completely different lives underneath it. One is counting down to a deadline. The other is simply choosing a moment. That difference is built years in advance, quietly, by the decisions nobody sees. Here's the thing about all three of these signs. None of them require a catastrophe to develop. No one wakes up one day and decides to retire broke. It happens quietly, one skipped decision at a time. The account you meant to open and didn't. The conversation about dividends you meant to have and postponed. The years that slipped by while later kept being later. I'm not walking through this list to make anyone feel behind. Some of you watching this recognize one of these signs in yourselves right now, and that recognition, uncomfortable as it is actually the most valuable thing that's happened in this video so far. Because you cannot fix what you refuse to look at honestly, and you're looking at it right now. Let me tell you what usually happens after someone watches something like this. There's a moment of clarity, real clarity. And then, within a day or two, life pulls them back into the current. The kids need something. Work gets loud again. And that flicker of resolve gets filed away under "I'll deal with this soon," which is the same drawer where most good intentions quietly go to expire. I don't want that for you. So let's talk about what starting actually looks like. Stripped of all the overwhelm that usually kills it before it begins. Here's the mistake almost everyone makes. They think building a backup plan means doing everything at once. Opening the annuity, restructuring the portfolio, researching REITs, calling a tax advisor about a Roth conversion. All in the same week, out of a sudden burst of urgency. That approach doesn't fail because the ideas are wrong. It fails because it's exhausting, and exhaustion is the enemy of consistency. You don't need to overhaul your entire financial life this weekend. You need to take the next right step, and then the one after that. If you take nothing else from this video, take this. The goal isn't to become a financial expert overnight. The goal is to stop being a passenger in your own retirement. That shift, from passenger to driver, doesn't require perfect knowledge. It requires one honest look at where you stand and one decision to move, even slightly, in a better direction. Maybe that first step is simply sitting down and calculating, in real numbers, what your actual monthly expenses will be in retirement, and comparing that honestly against what Social Security alone would give you. Most people have never done this math. They carry a vague, uneasy feeling instead of an actual number. And vague feelings are much harder to act on than a concrete gap. Once you see the real number, the real distance between what's coming in and what you'll need, the fog starts to clear. Fear turns into a target. And a target, unlike fear, is something you can actually work toward. It doesn't have to be complicated. Add up housing, food, healthcare, transportation, the small comforts you don't want to give up. Write down what Social Security is projected to actually pay you. You can find that number on your own statement, not someone else's estimate. Subtract one from the other. Whatever number is left, that's the gap your backup plan needs to close. Some people find that gap is smaller than they feared. Others find it's larger than they expected. Either way, a number you can see is infinitely more useful than a worry you can't quite name. Maybe the next step is opening a conversation, not a contract. Talking to a fee-only financial advisor, someone who isn't paid a commission to sell you a specific product, just to understand which of these tools, the annuity, the dividend portfolio, the real estate income, the Roth conversion, actually fits your specific situation. Not all four apply equally to everyone. Someone 5 years from retirement needs a different mix than someone 20 years out. That's not something a YouTube video can calculate for you, and honestly, you should be suspicious of anyone who claims it can, without knowing your numbers. What I can tell you, from watching this pattern play out again and again, is this. The people who end up in the best position at 65, 70, 75 aren't the ones who started with the most money. They're the ones who started. Full stop. The construction worker who put $50 a month into dividend-paying stock starting at 45 is, 20 years later, often in a stronger position than the executive who meant to start investing once things settled down and never quite got there. Time does something money alone cannot do. It compounds patience into results. And here's the part that matters most for anyone watching this who feels like it's already too late. 48, 52, 56 years old, no real system in place yet. It is not too late. I want to say that plainly, because the entire financial industry benefits from you believing otherwise, from you believing that if you didn't start at 25, you've already lost. That's not true. Every single stream we talked about, guaranteed income, dividends, real estate, tax-smart withdrawals, can still be built starting today. Later than ideal, maybe. But later than ideal and too late are not the same sentence, and confusing the two is exactly what keeps people frozen instead of moving. 5 years from now, you'll be 5 years older either way. The only variable you actually control is what those 5 years were spent building, not what you meant to build, what you actually built. If you're still here with me, this deep into the conversation, I want to say something directly to you, because it tells me something. It tells me you're not the type of person who watches a hard truth go by and just scrolls past it. You're someone who sits with things, who thinks them through. That's rare, and it's exactly the kind of person this channel is for. So if this conversation has meant something to you tonight, I'd genuinely appreciate it if you'd subscribe and stick around. We talk about exactly this every single day. The real numbers, the real strategies, the things that actually move the needle for people building a life after the paycheck stops. No hype, no shortcuts. Just honest conversations, the kind I'd have with you if we were sitting across from each other instead of through a screen. And I'll be honest with you about something else. A lot of people my age, and probably a lot of you watching, grew up believing that talking about money openly was somehow impolite. something private, something you kept behind closed doors, even from your own kids. I understand where that came from. But I think that silence has cost people more than the mistakes themselves ever did. Because the people who struggle most in retirement aren't usually the ones who made a bad decision. They're the ones who never had anyone to talk this through with, who figured it out alone, in the dark, and only found out they'd gotten it wrong once it was too late to fix. So consider this our conversation, the one you maybe never had with your own father. The one I wish someone had sat me down and had with me 20 years earlier than they actually did. Now, let's get back to it. Because there's one more piece of this puzzle I haven't shown you yet, and it might be the most important one. Everything we've talked about so far, the trust fund, the shift away from pensions, the 4 streams of backup income, the warning signs, all of it lives on the strategy level. What to build, why to build it. But there's a deeper layer underneath all of it. And it's not about strategy at all. It's about identity. About the story you've been quietly telling yourself about who you are with money. Here's what I mean. Some people, deep down, believe they're not good with money. Not because it's true, but because somewhere along the way, a mistake, a bad year, a comparison to someone who seemed to have it figured out, got translated into an identity. And once that identity sets in, it becomes a kind of gravity. You avoid the statements. You avoid the conversations. You avoid the numbers. Because looking at them feels like confirming something painful about yourself, rather than just checking a fact. I want to gently take that identity apart, if it's been sitting somewhere in you. Being behind on your retirement planning at 50 is not a character flaw. It's not proof of anything about your worth or your intelligence. It's usually just proof that you were busy living, raising kids, building a career, surviving whatever your particular decade threw at you. Nobody sat you down at 25 and explained trust fund depletion dates and dividend reinvestment. Most of us learned this the way I'm teaching it to you now, later than we would have liked, from someone willing to say it plainly. The shift that changes everything isn't a new spreadsheet or a new account. It's the moment someone stops seeing their financial situation as a verdict on who they are and starts seeing it as simply where they are right now on a timeline that isn't finished. That single shift in identity is often what finally gets someone to open the account they've been avoiding, to make the phone call they've been postponing, to look at the number instead of flinching from it. Because here's the truth underneath everything we've discussed tonight. Strategy without belief doesn't move. You can know every single fact I've told you. The 2033 date, the 4 income streams, the 3 warning signs, and still do nothing if some quiet part of you believes it's already too late or that people like you don't end up financially secure. That belief is the real obstacle, not the market, not the government, not even the math. The belief. I've watched 2 people, given the exact same information, walk away with completely different outcomes. Same video, same numbers, same warnings. One goes home and opens an account that week. The other nods along, agrees with everything, and does nothing for another 3 years. The difference between them was never intelligence, and it was never opportunity. It was whether they believed, somewhere underneath the surface, that this was actually for them, that the outcome could actually be different if they moved. So if you take one thing from this section, let it be this. You are allowed to believe your story isn't finished yet. Not as a slogan, as a fact. The years ahead of you are still unwritten, and what gets written into them depends far less on what happened in your 20s or 30s than most people assume, and far more on what you decide to do starting this month. Let's go back to where we started, one more time. That man at the kitchen table looking at a number, $1,900. I want you to picture him one more time, but picture him differently now. Not as a warning, but as a choice waiting to be made. Because that number was never the whole story. It was just the floor. And a floor was never meant to be a ceiling. Somewhere between the fear of that first number and the peace of a life fully funded, there's a version of that same man, maybe a version of you, who didn't wait for Washington to fix a trust fund, who didn't measure his future against his father's pension, who quietly, without fanfare, without a single dramatic moment, built 4 small streams of income that didn't exist 5 years earlier. That man still gets the same Social Security check. The date in 2033 still arrives, whatever it brings with it. Nothing about the system changed because of what he did. What changed was him. He stopped standing on one leg and started standing on 4. And when the wind blew, because it always does, he didn't fall. That's the whole secret, if you can even call it that. Not a stock tip, not a hidden loophole. Just the decision to stop outsourcing your security to an institution that was never built to carry it alone, and to start building something that belongs entirely to you. I think about the people who came before us. The ones who worked their whole lives trusting a system, a company, a pension that quietly changed the rules on them somewhere along. I don't say that with bitterness toward them or toward the system. I say it because I think we owe it to ourselves, and honestly, to the people counting on us, to not repeat that same quiet trust without asking a few honest questions first. You've asked those questions tonight. Just by staying with me this long, that's not nothing. Most people never even get that far. I think about what it actually means to grow older in this country right now. Not the version in the commercials, the silver-haired couple laughing on a sailboat. The real version. The one where you wake up one morning and realize the years moved faster than the plan did. Where the number on the statement and the number in your head stopped matching a while ago, and you've just been avoiding the reconciliation, the way you avoid a drawer full of unopened mail. I've sat with people at that exact moment, and I can tell you, the relief on the other side of finally looking honestly at the numbers is almost always bigger than the fear that kept them from looking in the first place. Not because the numbers are always good news. Sometimes they're not. But because uncertainty, left alone in the dark, always grows larger than the truth ever turns out to be. A number, even a difficult one, can be worked with. A vague dread cannot. So here's what I'll leave you with. Not a promise, because I don't make those. Not a guarantee, because nobody honest can give you one of those either. Just this. The years between now and whenever your retirement begins are going to pass. They're passing right now, while you listen to this. The only real question, the one underneath every number we talked about tonight, is what those years are quietly building while they pass. Some people will close this video and let the feeling fade by morning. Others will open one account, make one call, Ask one honest question they've been avoiding. I don't know which one you'll be, but I suspect, given that you're still here, you already know the answer. If this conversation gave you something tonight, don't keep it to yourself. Follow the channel so we can keep having these conversations, and share this with 5 people who need to hear it. A sibling, a coworker, a friend who's been avoiding this exact math for years, the way most of us do, until something forces our hand. You might be the reason someone else starts 5 years earlier than they would have otherwise. That's worth more than any single tip I could give you. 5 people tonight, before you close this tab. That's the ask. And before you go, leave me an honest comment. Not great video. Tell me where you actually stand tonight. Whether one of those 3 warning signs hit close to home. Whether that 2033 date is the first time you've really sat with it. Whether you're one of the people already building, or just now starting to think about it. And tell me what you want us to sit down and talk through next. Annuities in more depth. How to actually start a dividend portfolio from scratch. What a Roth conversion really costs versus what it saves. This channel exists because of exactly those conversations, and the next one gets built from what you tell me tonight. The check is still $1,900. That part doesn't change tonight, but what you do with everything around that number, that part was always yours to decide. Not tomorrow, not next quarter, when things settle down, when life finally slows down enough to think straight. Tonight, in whatever small way is actually available to you right now. I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for staying until the very end.